Hello, Whiskey Moonshiners. Welcome to Whiskey Whistle. I'm your host, Mark, and this is Whiskey Review number 118. 118? Yes, it's 118. We're back to USA, to Tennessee this time. This is a product from Jack Daniel's distillery known as Gentleman Jack. It's 40% ABV, natural in color as all American whiskeys are. And what else? Well, it qualifies as a straight bourbon, but they prefer the term Tennessee whiskey just to give themselves a little bit of distinction, a little bit of differentiation. Very interesting bottle, different from the regular Jack Daniel's, still square, and it comes with a little box, which is, I guess, kind of nice. It'd be nice if the box were, let's say, just slightly jazzier than that, but it's simple, it keeps the cost down, and you got a little tag there telling you about the process. We'll probably read that in a minute or so, and we'll let that take a little bit of breathing. Doesn't need much. It's probably, to be straight bourbon, what do they need? They need 2 years minimum. So probably it's a little bit longer, probably 3, 4, possibly even 5. Yeah, we'll let that breathe for a little while. Definitely a bourbon style, although apparently their mash bill is a little bit different than other big bourbon brands. Okay, anyway, Jack Daniel's also is the #1 selling American whiskey in the world. It's owned by Brown-Forman and has been so since, I believe, 1956. Jack Daniel's was a real person, one of 10 siblings, one of 10 children that grew up back, when was he born? Do I have a date there? Oh, I don't have the date. Anyway, I think his birth date is even in dispute, but oh dear. I didn't write it down because it is in dispute, but there's a birth date on the tombstone and a different birth date that is claimed by biographers. Anyway, now just a quick bit of the history. So his mother passed away. He wasn't thrilled with his stepmom, so he left at a very young age, and he was taken in by a lay pastor and distiller, I believe, whose name was Dan Call. And Dan Call, in turn, had a master distiller for his illegal moonshining outfit, whose name was, where is it now? It's here somewhere. Oh dear. Oh yes. Nearest Green, who was enslaved. After emancipation, he continued working with Dan Call. That's interesting. And Jack Daniel's learned his trade from these two gentlemen. And 1875, he inherited it from Dan Call, who retired for religious reasons. And 1884, he bought the land where the distillery actually is today. It was finally registered as a business, I think, about 1875 also. 1897, they started using square bottles, so that was, well, I think that was probably one of the things that really helped them stick in the mind of buyers, the square bottle, that's Jack Daniel's. So part of the fame, right? And 1910, the ailing Jack Daniel's, he gave the distillery to his 2 nephews, one of whom was Len, what's the pronunciation there? Oh dear. I have to come closer. I need glasses. Motlow. Len Motlow. And 1911, Jack Daniel's died. Anyway, fast forward to 1956, Brown-Forman buys it from, I believe, from Len Motlow or his children. And interestingly, or sadly, Starting around 1987 until 2002, the proof was reduced from 90 proof, 45% ABV, down to 80. That's too bad. I wonder why they did that. It's probably cost reasons, and that probably helped them become the biggest selling American whiskey in the world. Anyway, so that's that. And Jeff Arnott is the current master distiller. You can see his picture rolling through there. Other things that are interesting, they're one of the few distilleries to use all copper for the column stills, so that's interesting. They used to use pot stills before Prohibition, but after Prohibition switched to column stills. Other things that are interesting, what was it? There's something else that I'm forgetting. Well, we'll leave it at that. Okay, so copper stills. The mash bill. So 80% corn, 12% is malted barley, and 8% is rye. The rye is from Minnesota, in fact, not far from where I live. The malted barley from Montana, and the corn from, I believe, Kentucky and Illinois. They say that the lower rye helps to provide a little more smoothness to it. Okay, well, let's get into this. Now, what's special about Gentleman Jack is, if you don't know about Jack Daniels, part of the process before entering into the bottles is to filter the whiskey, or pour the whiskey over a special charcoal which is made from sugar maples. So sugar maple charcoal, little chips. There's a photo of it there, actually. So they pour that over, pour the new make spirit over the charcoal before entering the cask. So that's the first phase of filtering. I wouldn't really call it filtering. It would definitely turn a nice color right away from that fresh charcoal. Then with Gentleman Jack, after maturation, before bottling, they do the process one more time. So it's had this double mellowing, they call it. And, well, maybe I'll read about that here. Introduced in 1988, Gentleman Jack is carefully crafted using only the finest grains, iron-free water from our own cave spring, and a time-honored process that dates back more than 140 years. They make special use of their unique charcoal mellowing process. Gentleman Jack is charcoal mellowed twice, once before it goes in the barrel, and then once again after it is fully matured. Alright, so that's the information there. I did forget about the yeast. They have their own special yeast. A lot of the distilleries have their own yeast, but they've got their own yeast that they're using, I believe, the rye and the corn as food for the yeast, to keep the yeast alive. So that's a kind of like their trade secret. And it is known as a sour mash. So a portion of the spent mash, the spent wash, goes in to the unfermented wash. Okay, so post-fermentation, take some of that spent mash, and then you put it into, actually I think it's after they poured out the beer. So you got these mass of solids, grains. So they take that, they put that into the unfermented wort, we'll call it. And that adds some acidity. That's why it's called a sour mash. All right? Most bourbons work on this sour mash process. Okay, time to get on the nose. Let's have a very short advertisement from YouTube right now. Welcome back. Onto the nose with Gentleman Jack. 40% ABV, natural in color. Likely a bit of chill filtration. Very spicy. Big spice. Huge spice. Or if I want to, should I quote So should I mimic the Republican nominee? Huge, huge spice. Huge. I really like the way he says huge. Huge. All right. Election's coming up pretty soon. Sorry for ruffling through here. There it is. Okay. Big spice. Lots of spice. Some vanilla. A little bit of apple in there. I wrote here also salt caramels. A light little bit of floral notes, and also some Aunt Jemima. Especially if you kind of stick your nose in it and keep it there for a long, long time. You get this sweetness that you don't normally get from either Jack Daniel's or other bourbons. Anyway, interesting. Very engaging nose. And for 40% ABV, a big nose considering the low ABV. Anything else? Yeah, that's it. On to the taste. Cheers all. There's a little bit of this power that Jack Daniel's has. It's still present there. You might call it roughness. Anyway, a little bit of strength there. It's sweet and spicy. A bit of that burn. And the flavors, appley. Even some baked apples as well. Let's go back in there. You would not take this for 40%. If I tried that blind, I would say it was more like 43. Not 46, but 43 anyway. Very potent. You know, we didn't talk about the color either. You know, it's brassy, right? It's deeper than copper. It's like a oxidized copper shade. You've got some wood smoke there, some embers. A little bit of ashiness to it as well. But anyway, baked apples, sweet and spicy, cinnamon. That's the big flavor that I'm getting here. Cinnamon, bit of vanilla. And the finish, it's dry and spicy. For having low rye content, it's got a lot of rye spiciness at the end here. Dryness as well. Some fruit leather, lots of tannins too. Okay, now even though it's 40%, I do suggest you add a bit of water. And don't be shy. Okay, bourbon, big flavors in bourbon. Don't be shy to add a substantial amount of water, even if it's 40% ABV. Let that mix and meld. Now, Jack Daniel's, I pretty much wrote it off as a whiskey years and years and years ago. But not long, maybe about a year and a bit ago, I was at a local pub. What was it called? They're all over Seoul. Typically in basements. Anyway, so this went into this old-fashioned Korean whiskey and beer bar. What's the name? It's gone. And Jack Daniel's was such a great price, so I ordered a double. And they were quite surprised that I wanted it neat with no Coke. Anyway, tried it, and I was quite surprised with the smoothness of Old Number 7, and also surprised with the floral notes that I got from it. I was shocked. I had never thought that I would come to be a person who would say that Jack Daniel's is decent whiskey, and I do believe that. Interestingly, it's also the biggest selling whiskey in, I think, in the UK right now. So that's interesting. They've got all that Scotch whiskey there, and they go for an American whiskey. Now my nose is getting stuffed up for some reason, and it wasn't earlier. I gotta smell that first. Oh, whoops. Okay, we'll have a short advertisement right here. Welcome back onto the nose with water, Gentleman Jack from Jack Daniel's Distillery. Okay, well, from my notes is just suddenly plugged up. From my notes, I wrote here, smooth vanilla. Something like the barley malt begins to grow. So almost scotchy with water. And likewise, the rye really comes through with water too. More salt caramels coming through, and a lot like rye, like Lot 40 from Canada. No, I can't smell a thing right now. Jeez. All right, well, let's get on to the taste. Cheers. That cinnamon is really tempered. And it gets a little bit more sour, in fact, more like green apples. And you notice more of the rye with water also. Yeah, a little more minty. Minty, dusty rye coming out there. And the finish is not quite as dry, a little bit fruitier, and according to my notes from earlier, that fruit leather as well as some jam, strawberry, raspberry jam is coming through here. All right, anyway, so that is Gentleman Jack from Jack Daniel's Distillery. So the Whiskey Whistle whiskey score for this one is going to be 81 out of 100. That's 81 out of 100 points for Jack Daniel's Gentleman Jack. Now, I do like it, but for the price, I would prefer something even like the Wild Turkeys, either the 81 or the 101. For about the same price, just a little bit more, you can get the 1792, and I think I even like the Evan Williams straight bourbon a little bit better than this. But anyway, despite that, interesting flavors. Really cool, this double mellowing process. I'm sorry, I've got some gas here. Terrible. Interesting, but what did I not like about it? There was that bit of burn at first without water, and I didn't recognize. I mean, the old number 7 did not have the burn for me that I noticed in this bottle. So interesting. A lot of people say this is a lot better than number 7. It's different. I don't know if it's better. Anyway, tell me what you think about Gentleman Jack, okay? 81 out of 100, and we will call this the Masked Rye Scotchy Whiskey. So that rye and some kind of a malted barley flavor really comes out with water there. That was interesting. Maybe 81's a bit harsh as a score, but I'll leave it at 81. Let me know what you think, and do subscribe to Whiskey Whistle. Thanks for joining. You can click down the link right down there in the corner, and why not leave a comment, and if possible, like the video and share it with your bourbon friends, okay? Take care, everyone. We'll see you next time for Whiskey Review number 118, which is, I don't know. Stay tuned and you'll find out.